I'm so happy to say Jane and Danae now join me at the table. I want to talk a little bit about the story behind this thing. By the way, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
What a snowy old day to show up at this.
Surprise!
I know, what a snowy old day to show up at the CBC.
Oh, my goodness.
God. But I have to say, like, I can't get over the amount of sort of fun you guys are having out there. Danae, what are you feeling when you play that music?
I mean, that's the best moment. You know, that's the moment I most enjoy being performing. That's what we all have studied for. So
yeah,
we enjoy it all the time.
Jane, how about you? What are you feeling in that moment?
I just feel a great sense of collectiveness and friendship and just, I don't know. It's just a feeling, a good feeling that you're in a safe zone.
It feels like it,
nice.
hey? Can you tell, speaking of safe and unsafe zones, can you tell me the story about how this thing came together? Because I heard it, like you got sick in Mexico?
Yeah, but that's actually, yes. What happened?
Am I right?
Yes, it's true. Well, you know how brutal our winters are here, right? So
we're in the middle of it right now?
Yeah. This is the first couple of days.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Start planning, folks. So like, January, February, you're getting ready to like get the hell out of here. And so my partner, my husband, Larry Kramer, producer, trumpet player, went to Mexico all the time. And so I went with him one time and I got super sick. And then I went a second time and I got super sick. And the third time, three strikes and you're out. It was like, okay, this place is not working for me. And so then we saw, this is 1982, we saw a very cheap vacation in the Toronto Star. It was just when Cuba was opening up tourism. It was in Santiago de Cuba, so it was on the eastern provinces or the Caribbean side. And it was a really cheap vacation. It was like $300 and something flight, 3 meals a day, and hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, well, we got nothing to lose. Let's try it. And so from the first moment we got to Cuba, I would say in 4 hours, I heard 5 different styles of Cuban music. Just within 4 hours, there was a band in the airport.
Mm-hmm.
There were 2 bands in the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we got to our destination, about an hour and a half away, there was another band that was playing a totally different style. Then there was a comparsa, which is the music for carnival. So that's got really spirited sort of African, drums and singers and dancers. And then that night, which was the moment where the penny fell, was a song group, an 18-piece song group. And I love to say there was more people in the group on that stage that night, on an outdoor stage facing the ocean, than there was in the whole hotel. There was like 8 people in the hotel.
Right.
And we were 2 out of that 8. And that was the moment. And I ran back to the room and got our horns, and we sat in the front row because there was lots of empty seats. And the guy saw the horns and said, "Come on up here." And from that moment, first day we were there, we started playing.
It's really tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
Danae, tell me a little bit about the kind of music you were drawn to growing up in Cuba.
Well, I studied classical music. So that's our conservatories teach just classical music.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up listening to Chopin, Beethoven,
Mm-hmm.
and playing it. And then when I was in the middle of the second level of the education, I started learning a little bit of jazz harmony and all of that, because we didn't have a professor at school that would teach us that. So everything we'll get is recordings, is people would pass on hard drive with books and everything we could get. So to be studying something that is not what they teach us at school. And sometimes if your professor catch you doing popular music, then probably they will be putting harder stuff. Like that was my case. I was studying classical music and I started playing jazz in the Sunday afternoons, and I told my piano professor, and she was like, "Okay, you have time for this? Here is more Chopin, here is more Beethoven, here is more everything." So
here's harder music.
Until one day I say, "Hey, I am here studying because I want to. I'm not here because my parents push me or so.
Right.
And I just want to learn something else. Learn what when I go out of this country or when I go out there to perform and someone knows that I'm Cuban, they will ask me to play popular music, which we have, Afro-Cuban jazz and song and all these Cuban styles that are amazing.
Right. So so you start playing jazz then? You're very great, by the way.
Oh,
and
thank you.
when did you meet Jane?
I met Jane at a jazz festival in Havana. We were doing one of the latest gigs during the festival. The last gig is at the Habano Cafe, and it's pretty small. People go there to smoke some Habanos and listen a little bit of music. And Jane was there with the Jazz Safari, Jazz FM 91, Jane and Larry. And Jane doesn't remember that much meeting me that night because at the time, I didn't speak any English or so. So the one that the band leader I was playing with, which is Daime Rosena, she started talking to Jane, and then Jane brought her here, and she going back to Cuba with the idea of making a girls band. And
well, yeah, let's talk. Let's talk about that for a second, because I should mention that for people who are listening to this on the radio, everyone in the band is a woman. And Jane, from what I understand, that was intentional, right? Where did that idea come from?
Yeah, well, Larry and I, my husband was my boyfriend at the time. We started playing, I guess, in 1977, 78. We had our own quintet, and it was more, straight ahead jazz. And then we took this accidental route to Cuba in 1982, and we started to work with Cuban musicians. And, I was always the only woman in the band. Even when it was a jazz band, pretty much, I was the only woman. And I always wanted to be one of the guys. And it's a little bit easier with North American jazz to be one of the guys. But then when you start playing with Cuban musicians, to be one of the Cuban musicians is really not.
So you were finding yourself playing with almost all men in Cuba.
Yeah. You're never really one of the guys, the Cuban guys. And so we did our first record, 1990, in Cuba, called Spirits of Havana, and that really launched us. And for many years, we made many more records, with going right across the whole country. We did a documentary film with the NFB. We've done 2 films in Cuba, moving in every province. Cuba just has this, incredibly diverse music, very, very rich, so many genres, and we kept making different projects. But I was always the only woman, and I was also doing some work in the conservatories with some of the young students and taking technicians there with a program that we have called Spirit of Music, and taking instruments down. And I kept meeting these young women, but I wasn't seeing them out on the scene playing. And so 5 years ago, Larry really pushed me to say, you keep talking about all these women that you're seeing, and you can't get them up at jam sessions and blah, blah, blah. Why don't you try and do a project, a recording? And so we changed it up. And we went down and we formed this group, and we did a recording, and it was pretty tough.
Was that easy to find musicians to play with?
No, it wasn't.
No.
She's laughing because she's how she was playing when we made our first recording compared to how Dana is playing now. Mm-hmm. And I would say all the musicians in the group, there's just a huge leap from where we've gone from our first recording, which actually got a Juno. Mm-hmm. And that kind of made me think, well, maybe I'm onto something. Maybe I should pursue this. Not just the Juno thing, but that people, were taking acknowledgement out of. Maybe it was sending a message. It wasn't formed to send a message, but the fact now that it's sending a message is a bonus. And so we continued. We did our first tour of Canada, and then we thought, well, let's see if we can get into the U.S., because I had done it with other Cuban groups that we had formed. And that, it's tricky because you have to petition the State Department to get in, and you have to work a year in advance. And it's a lot of work. It costs a lot of money too. But anyway, we got our first tour of the U.S. and we did that. And then we turned around and we did another recording and that took us to the next level. And so we've slowly just keep setting these goals for ourselves in Maqueque that to try and reach this. Now, our last goal was like, let's go to Europe. Let's see if we can get some gigs in Europe. And now we've done 2 tours of Europe, and we're embarking on a 3rd tour.
Well, I want to spend some time just in a second talking a little bit about some of the challenges that come with trying to do this kind of the work together. Mm-hmm. But Dana, like, is that meaningful for you as well? What Jane was just saying about having all women come together and play this kind of music.
It is hard to find that many girls in Cuba our age playing what we call popular music, and specifically jazz. It's really hard, and for us to get all together on board and kind of we had to push ourselves to be better. As Jane said, I wasn't playing half of what I play today, and it's been a process because we grow up as musicians, but also because of all the touring we have done, all the music I have heard after I met Jane, after I started into more serious jazz or so, and I believe it's now opening a little bit. Now you can see more women out there, but it's still, and our message is like, go out there, perform, don't be shy, because sometimes it is about that, and other times it's about our society that is still a little bit macho society.
Right. I mean, so not to mention just the challenges of, I'm guessing you guys can't just get together on a Tuesday night and give each other a call and show up. I mean, you know what I mean?
No,
like, it's not
a little bit more entailed in getting us together.
Right.
But as Dana just mentioned, like, I mean, the way we all get better at doing anything is to be given the opportunity, and that's all we were trying to do, was like, okay, let's give these women an opportunity and see what happens. And it's amazing. I mean, I always think of it like, I think of the Williams sisters, the tennis players, and like, why did they get so good? Well, they worked really hard, but they got the opportunities to go out there and play the top players. And that's the only way you get good.
Right. I mean, it's really amazing music. I'm happy you guys are here. I know you're going to do one more song. You're going to do Havana de Noche, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about it.
This is a piece written by our drummer, Jissy Garcia, and it's very beautiful. I love it. One of the pieces we do is La Linea, which is of Havana during the daytime and all the trials and tribulations of what's entailed in daily life in Cuba. And Havana de Noche is a very intoxicating, evocative evening out in Cuba. It could be, for anybody who's gone there, they know what all the crazy things. Nightlife in Cuba is special.
Well, I'm excited to hear it. This is Jane Bunnett and Maqueque performing Havana de Noche on Q.